It's been a little minute. I wanted to come on because I have an exciting, beautiful thing to share with you. If you follow me, you know that I love the watercolor company DeepDeepLight. I have a few favorites, and they are one of my very favorites. I am an ambassador for their paints. I use their paints all the time. In fact, I just did a lesson for my patrons about using one color and getting all sorts of beautiful results from it. This was our lesson yesterday. This is a color called Wild Berry. Really beautiful. But recently, we created a palette together. This is the palette right here. And I am going to... Let's see here. Oh, sorry about that. I got a knife so I could open this. So this palette arrived to me and I want to open it and show you. So DeepDeepLight is actually based in Riga, Latvia, or outside of Riga, Latvia. Oh, this is something special too. This is a new color that I created with them over Zoom, so I could share that with you as well. But this is actually going to be coming in a new palette that we're putting together for the fall, and of course I'll share that with you as well. But the shipping is super fast. I get things from them faster than I get things from some of the places I order from here in the United States, so it's not an issue. And these paints are just made so beautifully. So this is the tin that the palette comes in. The palette is called the Flower Moon palette. And I created a special piece of artwork for it. I believe it's on their website. You can see it there. But these are the colors. Aren't they beautiful? And this is such a really unusual palette. I'm actually putting together a course right now on my Art and Spirit Studio School to talk about how to use palettes like this and get the most out of them, to paint a wide variety of things, because I find that a lot of people that I know buy these beautiful handmade watercolor palettes and all they end up doing is swatching them, right? And we need to use them. So the course is really about that. But today I just want to share this palette with you and show you all of these beautiful, beautiful colors. So they come with this little, it says, wake me up with a drop of water. And that is true for any handmade paints. So I'm going to unwrap these and I'm going to write the names on the sides of the pans. And then I'm going to come back and I am going to swatch them for you and show you their magic. Okay, so these are all unwrapped. I will tell you the names of them as I swatch them. And as they said in the little piece of paper, I'm just putting a drop of water on each one. I have this large pipette, and it's great because you only have to fill it one time and you can do your whole palette and then some. So just one drop of water and just let it set for even a second. Some colors don't need any, some need a little more time. And I'm going to put a drop on that so I can show you that too. So just grab a swatching brush. I am going to use, let's see, I'll use this one for swatching. So when you swatch handmade paints, it's really a good idea to use a specific sort of technique so you can sort of see their potential, right? You sort of push them to the extreme and then you see their potential. And that's what we're going to do here. And I really messed my sketchbook up. But so I'm not using watercolor paper. I do not waste watercolor paper for swatching ever. Unless it's like for a very specific reason, like I'm trying to see how they'll work for a certain project or something like that. But this is just a Jackson sketchbook. It's not watercolor paper. It's pretty inexpensive drawing paper. Okay, so keep that in mind. And the other thing is that paint reacts differently on every paper, right? So you're always going to want to play with it on the paper that you love to use and make adjustments for your paper, okay? But this is a great paper for just swatching and to see a color. So the first color in the palette you're not going to even see. It's called Zinc White, and it is the most beautiful transparent white, and it's the one I use all the time. I have big, huge pans of it because I use it so much that they made for me. And they do that. They will custom make big pans for you of any of their colors that you really love and that you use a lot. So that zinc white, it's super useful for all sorts of things, from putting a tint into darker colors to pushing into a sky to make beautiful clouds, which is a technique I use often for skies. So it's just a super useful color to have, and I wanted to make sure it was in the palette. The next one is called Peach Blossom, and it's this really, really pretty baby peachy pink. It's milky and gorgeous. And if I put some down on the paper, this one is not going to separate too much, but it has this gorgeous milky quality to it. And I love this color. It's also beautiful in skies, but I use it for a lot of things. The next one is called Gerda's Pink, and it's a really special color. One of the paint maker's daughters invented this color. And it's a very soft and glowing red that also has sort of a pink cast to it. So if I put water down, I drop the pigment in, and I keep dropping water into it until it pushes it out to the edge. You're going to get different variations of color, right? And you're going to see any color separating properties or any granulation properties. I can always go back in with a little bit of the full strength color and drop it in somewhere. So I get a true representation of what this paint can do. All right, so that's Gerda's Pink. It is one of my very favorite paints ever. And I'm not a red person. I don't have a lot of red paint. I just don't use it that often, except for in my split primaries. It's just not a color that I use that often. So this is a perfect substitute for me. The next one is called Gold Ochre. It is a true gold ochre. It's an old ancient earth pigment is what it is. One of our oldest pigments. And I can drop it in here. It's very clear. It's very bright and transparent, and it makes a beautiful mixing yellow that creates very natural mixes, right? Because it's not bright acid yellow. It's a very earthy but clear yellow. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous color. The next one is called Rhubarb. I'm going to fit rhubarb right in here. Rhubarb is a very, very natural green. I'm just pushing water into it. Notice how the paints all do something a little bit different when you do this technique. They all have a different way of being. They all have a different energy to them. Okay, this one got very sort of fluid. This one went out in a starburst. You know, they just all have a different pattern. This one really wouldn't do much of anything. It's so pale that it's hard to see on the paper, but it is beautiful, and I use it almost every day. All right, the next one is called Solstice Fern, another really gorgeous natural green. This one has chromium oxide green in it, so it's very rich and strong. Look at that starburst pattern. So beautiful. I just push water into it until my paper becomes flooded with the water and just let it work its magic. Over time, you're going to see how these colors separate into other colors too. You'll get like a golden halo here, you know, and a little bit of blue maybe. It just really unlocks the color. Next, we have lavender. Lavender is so cool because to see how it gives that pink on top, that's just part of the special mix of this color. So drop it in there. This one doesn't whoosh quite as much. It takes a little bit more to push it out. See how this one just filled the space, and this one is a little slower and heavier. But it's flooded and it will separate. Next is a color called Wild Berry, which is a stunner. Look at the flocculation of the pigment out here at the edges. See that? That means little particles cluster together, almost like there's a magnetic field. Such a beautiful color. And next we have a color called Cherry Blossom. It's a beautiful, very muted, ashy pink. Almost like a gray pink. It's also milky. It is the color of cherry blossoms. See how they each react differently. After that, we have Night Raspberry. This is everyone's favorite. It's really, really dark. Makes great dark mixes. And it does super magical things. Okay. There's a great range of value here. He's going to come visit. This paint moves, really moves. So I'm going to move a little bit over and just leave that spot blank. That's Night Raspberry. This is French Ultramarine because I think all palettes should have it. Theirs is super beautiful, very intense, gorgeous granulating blue. The most true warm blue we have. And then this last blue is called Forget Me Not. And boy, is it pretty. It fills a cooler blue spot in the palette, but it's special. It's very pale and yet also very colorful. A little slower to move. There. This color is super unusual. It's called Bat. It's another one of the milky colors, which means it has some zinc white in it. Pushing water into it. It will also separate into different colors, and it's great. I use it a lot for adding shadows in fields. It's really great to mix with yellows to sort of mute them a little bit. I love it for that. The next color, I'm going to do River next. River is the most beautiful blue. It's so unusual. It's a real mix of pigments and has a transparency to it that's just gorgeous. It gets really, really deep dark, but it masses out into beautiful sort of ethereal blues. It's just exquisite. All right, and then last but not least is Mother Earth Gray, which I think is their just magnus opus. It is super beautiful. And every time, it's always mixed with the same pigment, but every time it's a little bit different. I have like 3 versions of it right now. It's always a surprise. It's similar but different. I can't explain it. Oh, this one is gorgeous. This is a newer. And it is the most beautiful gray. It goes very pale, but it also gets really dark. And so I use it a lot to create shadows and to create darker colors. So we'll let this dry. All right, I'm going to let all of these colors dry. I'm just going to put a little more blue here. It just I put a little bit too much water in this one and it fell that way, and I really want you to see how it granulates so lovely. Look at that night raspberry. Gosh. All right, I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll come back and take a look at the colors once they're dry. Oh, you know what? Let me swatch my color too. This is my color, and it's called Midori. I had a contest from my patrons to name it, and they receive, the winner who named it Midori, which is green in Japanese, is receiving a Flower Moon palette and also a half pan of this color when it's ready. Pretty special, that one. All right, I'm gonna let these dry and then I'll be back. Okay, so these are now dry, and let's just take a look. Let's take a look at how they dried. So you see here, this is the peach blossom. The white you're not gonna see, but the peach blossom, look at that gorgeous separation of color that you get. So you've got this kind of taupey peach on the edges, and then a golden color on this edge, and then this pale milky pink, right? And then the Gerda's pink, the way the pigments dispersed and collected and collected at the edges is really, really beautiful. This is the gold ochre, which has got a little bit of granulation and just a really nice dispersion of pigments. This is the rhubarb, which we're going to do regular swatches in a second. But when you push it with tons and tons of water, you get this sort of separation between an umber and a yellow ochre. It's really gorgeous. Probably gold ochre, actually. This one is the Solstice Ferns. You got like a darker blue-green, a warm yellow-green, and then a gold and yellow in the background. The lavender is a mix between blue and violet and a pale pink. It's just stunning, very clear pink. This is the wild berry, so you've got this flocculation of pigment, and then magenta and violet, and then a pale pink. This is, now I can't remember what that is. What was that? Wait a minute. Violet, lavender, wildberry, violet. Oh, cherry blossom, sorry. Duh. So you got, I mean, just all sorts of beautiful colors happening in here, right? And then this is night raspberry, which goes into like deep blues, violets, and grays with a little hint of rose. This is ultramarine blue, which is just gorgeously granulating. No separation of pigments, but it's a very warm blue that granulates. Forget-me-not. So this one in particular, I love to paint hydrangeas with. It's exactly the color of hydrangea petal when they start to turn violet. You know how they get like a two-tone effect? This is beautiful. So you'd put a water glaze on the petal, then you drop in the pigment and drop more water in, so you would get this kind of effect as the paint dried. This is Bat, which is a beautiful mauvey gray with a hint of soft rose underneath. This is River, which goes from charcoal to deep Prussian to a blue-gray and like a pale cool blue. This is Mother Earth Gray, which is sort of like Payne's Gray with a hint of rose and lighter gray. There's rose there. And every time I use a new Mother Earth Gray, it's a little bit different, but the same. It's really a lot of fun. And then this is Midori, which is my color that I created with them. And I mean, isn't that the most beautiful? It's so beautiful. Oh, I just love it. So that's what happens with these paints when you push them with a lot of water, right? And we don't always paint that way, but it's really good to know this about your paints, how they react, because some very special things can happen that you can utilize in your work. So now I just want to paint swatches, like normal swatches. And I'm going to just get a swatching brush. and just swatch these colors out one by one so you can see them as a palette. So I'm just going to wet them with one drop because they have dried. And you know, when they're brand new and stuff, none of these are difficult to re-wet. There are certain pigments that are difficult to re-wet. One of them is like green earth. And if you get a green earth, you always want to wet it first. None of these are difficult to re-wet. So you don't even really have to, but I find that they just perform even more beautifully if you re-wet your paints and let them activate for a minute. So I'm just going to swatch this palette across and just, again, one more time, tell you the name of the colors. So this is Gerda's Pink, all right, and we'll kind of take a look at it. I mean, it has such a beautiful transparency to it. It's so clear. It's a really beautiful color. And then if you push some water into it, you get really nice, luminous, pale colors. Really, really beautiful. And then we can just put at its darkest. Even at its darkest, it's not that dark, okay? You can always tell a watercolor that's going to be able to have a huge variety between its mass tone and its, like in its pure form, and then with lots of water can have a huge shift because they look really dark in the pan. It's hard to tell what color they are in the pan. So you've got 5 colors in this set that have that ability to go from very, very dark to very, very light. And that it's always important to have some colors like that in your palette so you can achieve those dark tones. So this is Solstice Fern. So you can see it can get pretty intense, right? But not dark, right? And then if I push water into it down here at the bottom, you get some really beautiful pale greens. This is Lavender. And again, it can get bright with a lot of chroma, but it's never going to be dark. Oops. This is Night Raspberry. Can be very, very dark. But it can also go into some beautiful, unusual grays. That's such a gorgeous color. It's very popular too. Very, very popular. This is River, which can be quite dark, right? But also can mass out into a beautiful silver blue-green. This is a great color if you like to paint succulents. That's a really useful one. Peach Blossom is one of the lighter colors in this palette. Just a really beautiful pale milky pink. Rhubarb is mid-tone. Gorgeous. This color is really useful to mix into any bright color to just mute it a little bit in an interesting way. Wild Berry. It can get somewhat dark, but not as dark as some of the other ones. So it's mid to dark. But it also can mass out into beautiful colors. This is French Ultramarine, which is pretty standard, but just a really nice version. Mother Earth Gray can go pretty dark to very pale tones. Then there's our zinc white, which I won't swatch that. Gold ochre, beautiful mid-tone warm yellow with a lot of glow and transparency to it. Cherry blossom, very milky color. Can be masked out a little bit lighter. It's not as pale as some, but it's definitely on the lighter side. And gold ochre can mask out to a beautiful, clear, warm yellow. It's very nice for mixing other colors. This is Forget-Me-Not. One of my very favorites. It's on the lighter side. Really, really beautiful to mix with also. And then Bat. Light to mid, sort of in the same value as Cherry Blossom, but just great to use alone or to mix with other colors. For instance, let's say I was painting a field, and I've got here gold ochre, right? And I wanted to mute out the gold a little bit, so I can take Bat and add it in there. And I just get a nice muted gold. See that? Really, really useful. Oh, loose hands too. All right. And if I put a little bit more in, it's going to mute it out more and make it into a more taupey ochre. So it's just really nice for that kind of situation. Also, let's say I wanted to make this green a little bit more vibrant, right? Solstice fern. I can do a few things. I can add Forget-Me-Not to it, and I get more of a bluer natural green, okay? But I can also add gold ochre to it and brighten it up. Make it more like a leafy green, like a sap green. So you can do a lot with these colors. You could use this with ultramarine and get a more blue green that's a little bit darker, and then even add gold ochre to that. You can get a wide variety of greens. You can also add Gerda's pink, just a little bit to any green, right? And you're going to get a really unusual green that, if mixed with water and stuff, will sort of separate into some beautiful nuances. It's really, really pretty. So this palette is highly mixable. There's just all sorts of things you can do with it. I've made many landscapes with this palette. I mean, just look how gorgeous that silvery sagey green is from River. It's actually a blue, but what happens if you mix River with gold ochre? You get another green altogether. And by varying the degrees between one color and the next, you get, right? Look at that. And if you just put a touch, there's so many things you can experiment with this, but if you just put a touch of Gerda's pink in there, it becomes like a silvery sage green, right? Like a sage leaf. Super simple to make. Great mixes with these. Another great combination is gold ochre. I could just do this all afternoon. I won't keep you that much longer, but gold ochre with wild berry makes some really beautiful earth tones. Oops, I went in the wrong space. Hold on. gorgeous. Also, really easy skin tones to mix. You can make beautiful skin tones with this palette. And with skin tones, even adding just a touch of green, you can start to get a wide variety. And then you could go darker. If you went and added blue to it, for instance, you would go darker, or even Mother Earth Gray. So just such a variety of things you can do with an already fascinating mix of colors, right? All right, that's it. So I wanted to tell you that if you are interested in this palette, I have a discount code. I will put it in the description box below. It's basically just my name, Kateri Ewing. And I'll put the link to their website, the link to this palette if you're interested in it. Like I said, and I don't do this lightly. I've been asked many, many times to be an ambassador or an affiliate for all different kinds of paint companies, and I've never said yes until now, because this is what I use, and I believe in these paints, and they're consistently the highest quality and just so unique and beautiful. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. All right, everyone. Hopefully this was fun, and it's just so delightful to find a palette of colors like this. It is not usual, right? Not usual. All right. Thank you so much. I will see you again soon, I'm sure. Take care.